about that, whatever that means. And that's true for you online as well. If you're on the live stream and we've not had the opportunity to personally meet before, we'd love for you to fill out a little guest card there or drop a comment there in the feed and just let us know how we can serve you. We're hopeful that very soon maybe we'll get to meet you in person. And if you're part of the church family and you're not here with us today, just know that we miss you and we love you. And we're looking forward to seeing you again just as soon as the Lord makes that possible. But let's take our copies of the Word of God now and let's open them up to the book of Matthew. We're going back into our line-by-line, paragraph-by-paragraph expositional study, just kind of working our way right through the whole book of Matthew. If you didn't bring a Bible with you and you'd like to have one, there's some guys coming up the aisle. It's super important that you can see the text for yourself. And so when they pass you, just kind of wave at them. They'd be happy to put a Bible in your hands. And you can either borrow that and leave it on the seat when you're done, or if you don't own one at all, we'd love for you to take that home as a free gift from us, because, again, we really want you to have a copy of God's Word. All right, we're going to Matthew chapter 5, the fifth chapter in the first book of the New Testament, and we'll be spending our time today in verse 9, Matthew 5:9. So make sure you find your way there, and I'll meet you there in a moment. Back in the days of the American West, there was a popular gun company that rolled out a brand new revolver. Any gun people in here? How many of you like guns, especially old guns? Yeah, okay, I've got a few. All right, this was a revolver. It had 6 shots. It was a .45 caliber, and it quickly became the most famous handgun on the entire frontier in the Old West. The lawmen carried it, like the sheriff, but also the outlaws had this gun. Like nearly everybody that was carrying a gun during that time probably had one of these at one point in their life. It was the weapon that settled arguments in saloons, and we've seen those scenes out in the dusty streets where they have a standoff at high noon. This was the weapon. And the company that made it, they gave it a nickname, and it has stuck around for generations now. The founder of the company was a man named Samuel Colt, and the gun he designed is arguably the most famous handgun in American history. Colt simply called it the Peacemaker. The Peacemaker. All right, now think about that for a moment. It's a loaded gun, right? It's a tool literally built for one single purpose, to put a piece of lead in a human being. And the name, they decided when they sat down, they're like, what should we call such a thing, right? We'll call it the Peacemaker. Really? Come on now. I'm not sure that peace was often what was on the other side of pulling the trigger of this revolver. But before you write that off as just some kind of maybe strange marketing from a rough season of our American history, I need to let you know that, if you fast forward about 100 years to the 1980s, we're at the height of the Cold War now. And guess what? The United States built a nuclear missile, and it was designed to wipe out entire cities. And when it came time to name that weapon, guess what they decided to call it? They called it, of all things, the Peacekeeper. And decades before that, America had already built a massive bomber, the B-36, that was capable of carrying the most destructive payloads on planet Earth. And once again, they're like, what should we call it? We'll call it the Peacemaker once again. See, it would just seem that human beings have this strange habit that I'm observing today. We like to take some of the things that have the greatest potential for actual destruction, right? For wrecking havoc in the world, and we like to wrap them up in the language of peace. Don't you find that a little bit weird? And that's not just a modern problem, it's ancient. You could go back 2,000 years to the Roman Empire. They were running the same play. Rome advertised itself as the great peacemaker of the world. They called it the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. They were known that way around the world, and they even pressed it down into their pocket change. You can look at a coin from that time period. On one side of the coin, you'll see an image of the goddess of peace, and she's holding up an olive branch, supposedly extending peace to the world around Rome. But if you flip it over and you look at the other side of the coin, you'll read the word Son of the Divine Caesar. You say, what's the point? Well, they stamped the coin with both peace and power right into the silver, so that every single person handling the Roman money would be reminded that this is a peace that is held in place only by the sword of Caesar. And so if you step out of line in a single moment, those Roman soldiers are going to come and remind you what this peace, what has secured this peace and who's really in charge of keeping the peace. See, I would say that's the only kind of peace the world really knows anything about. Peace delivered by whoever holds the biggest weapon. Whoever has the longest, the most intimidating sword, right? In fact, we've even come up with a little clever phrase to describe that kind of peace. We call it keeping the peace. Keeping the peace. But I want to tell you this morning that that actually has nothing to do with the kind of peace that you're going to read about in the Bible. And it probably has very little, this might sting a little bit, it has probably very little to do with the kind of peace that you've been keeping in some of your relationships as well. Because most of the time, what we call keeping the peace is in fact not peace at all. It's just the result of when two parties decide that both are too afraid to talk anymore or to make a move anymore, right? We're not actually keeping peace. We are, in fact, avoiding peace at all costs. We're just not talking anymore. And this doesn't just happen between empires. It happens in our living rooms. That's why if we were to be honest this morning, there are people in this room, and truth be told, like in your family, in your marriage, in your home, there are certain subjects that you just don't talk about anymore because the last time we brought that subject up, it kind of went off like a bomb, right? So everybody knows now in the family, we don't go there again. Like if it's Thanksgiving, you just pass the potatoes and you smile, but you don't talk about anything real. Why? Because we need to keep the peace, we'll say. Or maybe you have a coworker that you've quietly learned to avoid at work because it always blows up, right? Or it's a friend that you used to be close to, but somewhere along the way you just quit. You gave up. What did you actually do? You stopped working toward peace in the name of keeping the peace. But here's the problem with that. A silent house is actually not a peaceful house. You know what I'm talking about? All right? A marriage with no arguments does not automatically equate to a marriage at peace. They're not the same thing. Sometimes the quiet that you're working so hard to protect is really just the sound of two people that have stopped trying. They gave up a long time ago, and so you can supposedly keep the peace on the outside, but actually there's still a lot of war and turmoil on the inside. And some of you know this all too well. And it's into that kind of a world that only knows how to keep the peace by force or by avoidance that Jesus is going to come today in Matthew 5:9. He's going to pronounce a blessing over a completely different kind of peace. And I want you to listen very, very carefully today to what he says, because one word that he uses in this text is going to change everything about our understanding of real peace. We're going to read it in just a minute. And when we do, I want you to notice that he doesn't bless peacekeepers. He blesses peacemakers. And friends, there is an ocean of difference between those two. All right, here's what we're going to learn this morning. God himself is not in the business of keeping the peace. He has no desire to do that. He is in the business of making peace. And this morning, I believe he's literally going to look up and down the aisles of this room. He's looking for individuals. He's looking for some couples, some married couples, some couples that aren't married. He's looking for some families, some friends, some church members that will join him today in laying down the keeping of the peace in order to make true peace in your relationships. I'm calling today's sermon, Stop Keeping the Peace. And I would invite you now to follow along as I read the seventh beatitude out loud. These are God's words. Give them your full attention. In Matthew 5, verse 9, the word of the Lord says this: Blessed are, don't miss it, the peacemakers. You see it? Peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. These are God's own words for Keystone Bible Church today. Let's ask his Spirit to come and help us learn them well, so we'll be equipped to go out and live them well in the week ahead. We're not just learning to learn, we're learning in order to live so that we'll be faithful disciples for King Jesus. If you're a note taker, I hope you'll jot some things down today. Here's the big idea I would encourage you to start with. It's the whole sermon in one sentence. So don't miss this. Begin by writing it down. I look like my Father when I create peace in a fractured world. I look like my Father when I create peace in a fractured world. All right, now let me just be clear from the beginning. Every single person in this room lives in a fractured world. All right, we're not talking about some subset of people. This is all of us. We all feel this to some extent. We may experience it to differing degrees, like how much we feel the fracturedness, the brokenness. But to one degree or another, it's true of all of us. And so don't ever believe the lie that the brokenness you're experiencing is unique to you. Like, we're all in this together. Maybe you're here today and you feel the fracture very acutely in your home. Maybe you feel it in your friendships. Maybe you feel it in the workplace. Maybe it's when you turn on the news at night and you're just struck with the brokenness of our world. Maybe you feel it deep in your restless heart when you try to lay down and go to sleep and you just can't turn things off and your mind is spinning and you're anxious. See, we all live in a fractured world, don't we? Can you agree with that? That part you don't get a choice about, but here's what you do get a choice over. You do get to decide what you are going to do with that brokenness. That's where the choice comes in. You can choose to try to keep the peace in the same ways that the world is trying to keep the peace, by either sort of ducking and dodging it, or on the flip side, you get really aggressive and you try to overpower it, right? One or the other. Or there's a better way. You can learn to literally create peace the same way that your Father creates it. And that's what Jesus is after. He wants you to know in Matthew 5:9 that when you make peace His way, something remarkable will start to happen inside of you. You'll literally start to look like Him. You'll literally start to love people the same way that Jesus does. And it will be that family resemblance that people will then be able to look at and actually be able to tell you're the real deal. Like you're actually His child. And that's no small thing in the Bible. That is actually the highest identity that a human being could ever be handed. And it is the goal that Jesus Christ wants for every single one of His followers. He wants you to live and to love just like Him. And if that will ever be our increasing reality, we're going to have to learn what He says today. We're going to have to learn to be peacemakers like Him, not simply peacekeepers. Let me show you 3 ways that the Bible is calling each of us to make peace in the week ahead. Here's the first one. Number 1, I create peace when I refuse a peace that just avoids the problem. I refuse to keep some version of peace that just avoids the problem, all right? Now go back to the one word I told you changes everything in this verse. Look at it again. Jesus says, blessed are the peace, underline it, makers, peacemakers, all right? Here's a little detail here that if you're just a casual reader of the Bible, you're never going to see this. But this exact Greek word that's being translated in your English Bible as peacemaker, you need to know, it only appears one time in the entire New Testament. One time, right here. You think that's a big deal? That Jesus would pick a word that He doesn't use anywhere else to describe a certain kind of peace that He's calling you and me to? Big deal, all right? Because out of all the words He could, it's not like the Bible doesn't talk about peace in other places. There are many words for peace. Many words for some soft, polite version of peace, like just get along to get along, right? Or just smooth it over, just brush it under the rug. Like there's many other words He could have chosen to describe peace, and yet He hand selects a very rare word, and the word He chose doesn't pronounce blessing over people that just sort of love peace or who wish for peace, like peace for all, right? Like that's not what He's talking about. He's blessing only those who are in the business of making peace, literally doing everything in their power to aggressively make it, to create it. So in other words, if you want to be blessed by God, all in favor of being blessed by God? Who wants that? I want to be blessed by God this week, all right? You want to be blessed by God, then the very first thing a real peacemaker has to do is probably the hardest part. You have to refuse the fake versions of peace, the kind that are so common in our world, the cheap kind of peace, the comfortable kind, the just avoid it and hope that it turns out and hope that it disappears kind of peace. That's what the world settles for. That's what they're going to tell you to settle for. I want you to get 2 different pictures in your mind to help you understand this. First get a picture of a cemetery. And let's say we're up north somewhere. It's a super cold day. It's gray. Any of you lived up north? You know what those gray, cold days look like in the north? Imagine walking through a gate. It's an old cemetery. You're the only one out there. You're freezing to death. What do you hear? Probably nothing, right? It's cold. Maybe there's an occasional chirping bird in the distance. But for the most part, what you're going to hear there is absolute silence. Nobody's raising their voice. Nobody's fighting over anything. And so by one definition, we might actually say that a graveyard is one of the most conflict-free places you can go because there's nothing living there, right? Nobody's talking ever. All right, now hold on to that image, and I want you to think of a second scene. We're going to come back to the graveyard in a minute, but also now picture a lake still up north. It's the dead of February. It is frozen solid. It's perfectly smooth, right? Smooth. There's not a single ripple on the surface because the ice is glazed over the entire thing. You stand there on the bank of that frozen lake, and what do you hear in a wasteland like that? Probably the same thing, right? Like, there's no sound coming from a cold graveyard. There's no sound coming from a frozen lake. It's total stillness. We might say it's peaceful in one sense, like it's not moving. No sounds, no movement. But here's my question. Would you ever stand at those scenes, at a graveside or at that frozen lake and say, now this is ultimate peace. Like, this is the true peace that my heart longs for. Right? Like, it's peaceful in one sense, but there's something really lacking. We would never say that because that kind of peaceful stillness, for it to exist, what had to happen? Something had to die. A lot of things had to die. That's what secured the quietness. Like, the frozen lake has ceased. There's no foliage around. There's nothing green. There's no water moving. There's no wildlife. Like, that's exactly why up north the spring is so glorious, because everything comes back to life, right? Like, that's why they love spring. And friends, that is exactly the kind of peace that this world keeps handing us. Graveyard peace. Frozen lake peace. A kind of peace that on the surface looks really calm, only because underneath something is dying, either slowly or it's already dead, right? And I have to say, like, graveyard peace, like, I know you guys well, most of you, and I love you dearly, and I would just say that is the perfect description for more than a few marriages in this room. Graveyard peace. Two people living under the same roof, but truth be told, everything between them has gone quiet and cold a long time ago. It's not alive anymore. The frozen lake, that is exactly what has happened with some friendships in this room. It is. They're still smooth on the surface. Like, nobody's going to look at you today and know that there's a problem. You're going to be polite when you pass each other in the hall, but underneath, what is it? Icy, dead, and frozen. Frozen solid, where there used to be life, but there is no longer any. See, maybe it's a brother and a sister who haven't really talked in years. Maybe it's a parent and a grown child who you can't talk about anything real. All you can talk about is logistics, because if you can't handle talking about anything that matters. See, that's where keeping the peace will lead you. It'll lead you to frozen, icy relationships, dead graveyard conversations, but that's not getting the job done for Jesus, and He refuses to bless that in your life. You want to bless marriage? You can't settle for that. You can't settle for keeping the peace, because the peace Jesus is talking about is not just the absence of conflict. The word beneath the verse here, it's the great Hebrew word shalom from the Old Testament. All throughout the Old Testament, shalom never once meant just stop fighting. Like it's not a defensive posture. It's an offensive, aggressive posture. It always meant wholeness. Shalom is like everything's put back the way it was always meant to be. We're not ignoring the problem. We're fixing the problem. The broken things have been mended. The torn things have been stitched back together. Crooked things have been made straight. Like, that's biblical language. And it's the kind of peace that Jesus is literally blessing here. The New Testament word you're going to read about that carries that same idea is the word reconciliation. Fully reconciled, fully restored. It's when we're not just getting along, but we're back in full fellowship like it used to be, if not better. What has been broken has been totally fixed. That's what the peacemaker is after. It's not just the person who's working to keep it all quiet and smooth on the surface. It's the person who is intentionally running toward the broken situation and actively doing whatever it takes to put things back together. Not giving up until it's fixed. And that explains something about the order of these Beatitudes, actually, that's easy to miss as we take them one at a time. Like, you might miss the overall flow. But do you remember which one came right before this one? What did we study last week? Blessed are, you can look down at it. It's not a closed book quiz. Blessed are the pure in heart, right? All right, the order is not an accident, because you cannot make real peace out there, like with somebody else, until something has first been made clean in here, inside, in your heart. Like, a divided, double-minded heart cannot bring wholeness into somebody else's life because it has no wholeness of its own to deliver. And to be clear, peacemaking is not a matter of personality type. See, I wouldn't want you to think that like it's just about being a calm, like passive individual. No, the calmest person you know in your life may not be a peacemaker at all. And truth be told, the most fiery personality person that you know is not disqualified from being a peacemaker. Because peacemaking has nothing to do with temperament. It's about a heart that God has made honest and pure and is now being poured out into the world around it with a desire to not just keep relationships comfortable, but to actually restore them and reconcile them to a right place. And here's the part that will probably mess with you a little bit. Sometimes this kind of peace that Jesus is blessing here, you actually have to disturb and aggravate the fake kind in order to accomplish it. It may not feel peaceful at first. Does that make sense? In other words, sometimes the most peacemaking thing you can do is walk into a room and gently but lovingly say the true thing. The thing that nobody else wants to say. A surgeon's blade has to cut before it can heal, right? Like that's what that is. And in the same way, you cannot mend what you refuse to name honestly. That's what makes false peace more dangerous than open war, because it sort of fools you into thinking that the problem can be solved when you've just hidden it, like you haven't actually fixed anything. Martin Luther once famously said, quote, "Let there be peace if possible," but listen to this, "but let there be truth at any rate." I love that, because that's the kind of peace Jesus is talking about here. Did you catch the order of what he said? Truth comes first, always. You tell the truth. Because a peace that's built on a lie is not ever going to lead to real peace. It's just a ceasefire. You've sort of like stretched this lie over the problem like a Band-Aid, and yet there's still a cancer underneath, like you haven't fixed anything. Honesty is the thing that actually starts the process of peacemaking, but hypocrisy will only it might make things quieter, but it's just a more polite kind of a war, like it's not solving the issue. And think about this. Who was the very first person to refuse to accept a fake version of peace in the Bible? Do you remember? Who's the first person to exist in the Bible? God himself, right? So think back all the way to the beginning, like Genesis chapter 2, Genesis chapter 3, when sin tore a hole in everything that God first created, and the whole human race walked away from him, right? Like shattered the relationship that they had with the God of heaven. What did God choose to do in that moment? Because he had a choice as well, just like you and I have a choice. He could have looked the other way. He could have swept the mess under the rug. He could have pretended like it'll be okay. It'll be fine. Like we just won't talk about that whole sin thing. Let's just pretend like that never happened. That would have been keeping the peace in that moment. But it would not have resulted in real peace. And he loved us too much to lie to us about our true condition, knowing where that lie would eventually lead, which is where? Straight into his just and eternal judgment, right? And so instead, he chose to tell us the truth about our sin, and he didn't stop there. Then he actively went and did something about it. And that's the same pattern that he's calling us to embrace today as well. I ask you, where have you been keeping a fake version of peace in your life, when Jesus is actually asking you to start making peace instead? Like, what's the conversation you've been avoiding? You know what it is, right? Who's it with? What's the sin you keep quietly managing instead of confronting? What's the relationship you've gone silent on, telling yourself that silence is some version of peace, like they're the same thing? Because I'm just going to tell you today, refusing fake peace is the first move of a real peacemaker. It's the only way you get there. And I will warn you right now, it is going to make you feel like you're starting trouble. Because those that don't want to make real peace won't like your effort to make peace. You might be the only one around willing to say the hard thing. You might be the only one telling the truth. But hear me well, Jesus will not call that starting trouble if you're the one telling the truth, right? If you're the one talking about what's really going on, he wants you to know telling the truth is the first thing that real love does. Like if you want to love like Jesus, this is what Jesus does. That's not moving away from peacemaking. That's moving straight into the heart of peacemaking. Nothing real ever gets built upon like a lie, upon a facade. And so it's going to require some people to step up and be brave and say the right thing and stop pretending. I would just strongly encourage you today to get specific with the actual relationships in your life, the specific scenarios, and make up your mind today, I refuse to accept any longer a version of fake peace that simply avoids the problem. That's where this whole discussion begins. But it's not where it ends, all right? You're just starting the journey at that point. Once you've told the truth about the brokenness, you can't just stand there and sort of admire your honesty, right? That's just step one. But you are now in a position to actually do something about it, to actually make peace. You have to move toward the goal, the ultimate goal, which is what? It's reconciliation. It's shalom in the heart, shalom in the relationships, which brings us to our second point. Go ahead and write this down. I create peace when, number two, I run into brokenness with the Father's peace. I run into brokenness with the Father's peace. In other words, a peacemaker does not tell the truth about the mess and then sort of dance around it. No, a peacemaker walks straight into it. A peacemaker is like a first responder. He's running into the burning building. He's running toward the terrible accident when everybody else is doing what? Everybody else is running away. It's the husband moving toward his wife when the marriage is in crisis. It's moving toward the hard relationship or the painful conversation, even if you take on more fire yourself, right? When everybody else is backing away. When the family is coming apart at the seams. The peacemaker is the one who is moving in the opposite direction, moving toward the fracture and carrying something specific with them in that moment. And what is that something? The Father's peace, all right? But here's what you have to understand about that. You can't carry the Father's peace to somebody else, much less deliver it to them, if you do not have it yourself. You have to have the peace that you're offering. You can't bring peace into somebody else's brokenness if you've never received it, which forces us to consider another really deeply personal question this morning. Before you try to go out and help others make peace, here's the question. Are you actually at peace with God yourself? Are you at peace with God? Get honest about that, because the Bible makes it clear that before any of us were ever peacemakers ourselves, every single one of us started out in the opposite condition. We started out as rebels against God, as His enemies. That's the story of the entire human race, ever since our first father, Adam, at the beginning of the Bible, when he declared his independence from God. Guess what happened? All of his offsprings ever since then have been born into and have been living in the rubble under the curse from his first rebellion. That was my condition at birth. That's your condition at birth. In other words, the fracture in the world around us, it began as a fracture between humans and God. That was the first fracture. And so our whole race, the entire human race, we are not in a neutral position. We are at war with God. We are battling every day with the God of heaven. Every one of us comes into the world with our fists raised up into the air against Him. We want to do life our way. And if you're honest, there's still a lot of that still in your heart, isn't there? Even as a follower of Jesus, don't you find yourself on a daily basis wanting it your way? You don't want to do it God's way most of the time. The Bible's very clear about this. Colossians 1:21. Once you were alienated from God, you were enemies in your minds because of your evil behavior. That's our condition. Romans 8:7, the mind governed by the flesh it's not neutral. It is hostile to God. It does not submit to God's law, nor can it do so. James 4:1, what causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? See, what's the Bible saying? It's saying that the reason for war between nations, the reason for fighting within families, the reason for splits among churches, the reason for divisions among governments, it all traces back to the war that exists between individual neighbors, which traces back to the internal conflict raging in the heart of every single one of us. It's true of all of us, and that traces back to the very first war, the one between the first humans and God. So pull the little thread on any conflict you've ever been in, and if you're honest, that's what you're going to find, a heart that still wants its own way. You still want your own little throne. You're still refusing to submit to the God who made you, which again means that the brokenness out there in the world, the brokenness we experience with others, that is not the root problem. It is only the symptom. The root is the rebellion that every single one of us has on the inside. Back in 1945, at the end of the World War II, there was a Japanese soldier named Hiroo Onoda. He was a young officer in the Japanese military, and he was stationed on a small island in the Philippines called Lubang. And here's what's crazy about his story. The war actually ended, and Japan surrendered. So So officially, there was peace. Once again, the war was over. It was final. But guess what? Onoda never got the word. And when it finally did reach him, Onoda did not believe that it was true. And so he just kept fighting on his little island there on Lubang. At one point, planes flew over and they dropped leaflets into the jungle. And all those little pamphlets said, hey, the war's over. You can go home. You don't have to keep fighting. But he was convinced that it was just the enemy trying to trick him. They sent out search parties looking for him, and he would hide. He just stayed out there in the jungle, still armed, still dug in, still firing from the hills. Anytime someone would approach, get this, not for weeks, not even just for a few years. He did this for 30 long years, hiding in Lubang. And he was not alone. He went out there with a little group. He started out with 3 other soldiers. One of them did eventually believe the war was over and came out and was actually taken to safety. He made it home alive. The other 2 kept fighting and were eventually killed. The last one was shot in 1972 in a war that had already ended decades before. Like, what are they fighting for? But Onoda himself, he would not be deterred. He just kept on fighting. And do you know what it finally took to get him to surrender? In 1974, they tracked down one of his old commanding officers, a man named Major Taniguchi. And they took the major and they flew him back to the island and they sent him out there to meet Onoda face to face. He was the only person in the world that Onoda would actually listen to. And when he finally saw Taniguchi's face and he heard the voice of his own commander saying to him, quote, well done, soldier, you are released from duty. Lay down your weapon and come home. Only then would Onoda surrender, because the major was the only voice he trusted. 30 years in the hills. And he finally steps out and hands over his rifle, and he finally goes home. Can you imagine? Fighting a war that had actually already been won? 30 years of hiding and fear and loss, suffering for literally nothing, simply because you would not believe. You would not believe that the war was over. You would not lay down your weapon. Listen to me, friend. That is not just Onoda's story. That is the story of every human heart apart from God. You and I were born just in a similar way. Like we're on that remote island in a war with heaven that has already been settled. Jesus has already settled it at the cross. And yet so many people, probably some people in this room today, you're spending your whole life still fighting, still dug in, still hiding from the very God who is calling you home, still certain that surrender is going to cost you something. And just as Onoda needed a voice that he could trust before he would ever come out and surrender, so do you. And good news, you have one. The King himself has come. He's come to where you're hiding. He's come to you in the person of his own Son. And he's not shouting, surrender or be destroyed. He's saying, the war's already over. Lay down your weapons and come home. That is the gospel of Jesus Christ. It's exactly what he's done for rebels like you and like me. Instead of sending, his legions to wipe us out as he could have done, he sent his own Son to live the sinless life that you and I could never live, to die the death that we actually deserve to die ourselves, and to rise again on the 3rd day, offering brand new resurrection life freely to anyone who will believe in him and follow him by faith as the Lord of their lives. Do not let anybody ever tell you that peace was cheap. It came through a cross. And it was at the cross that the Father purchased it with the lifeblood of his own dear Son. You remember the gun I told you about at the beginning of the sermon, the peacemaker? Here's the truth. The peacemaker was never a weapon. As Dr. Al Mohler once put it, quote, the gospel is the peacemaker. It's the only way real peace comes. The peace that you need from God, the peace that you need in your relationships. It will never be won by a sword. It can only be bought by a cross. And so if you're here this morning and you've never laid down your arms, I want you to listen closely. The King's voice is coming across the radio right now. And you do not need a special set of magic words to respond. You don't have to clean yourself up. You literally don't have to do anything. Just surrender. Just lay down your arms. Just come home. The war's already over. He's already made the peace for you. All you have to do is surrender to him. And you can do it right now this morning, right there where you're sitting. You don't even have to wait till the end of the sermon. Just come to him. Repent of your sins. Confess your allegiance and your loyal love to Jesus Christ and follow him for the rest of your life. Please do not spend one more day fighting a war that Jesus already ended centuries ago. And here's what happens the moment you do that. For the very first time, you are now equipped to run into the brokenness around you, carrying the same peace that you now possess. Because of the gospel, you can stop being a casualty of the war, and you can start becoming an ambassador for the one who has ended the war. That's the mission, friends. God's mission is not just about saving random individuals. Sometimes we think about it that way, but that's not what he's doing. His plan is actually to reassemble his entire shattered human family who have been scattered among all the nations of the earth. He's reaching across every enemy line that divides us to bring more and more representatives from every tribe and every tongue and every people group on the earth. He's bringing them back into his inner circle. He's on a rescue mission, do you understand? To reclaim his family, and the crazy thing is, he wants us to help him with that job. Isn't that wild? And so he hands that ministry over to people like you and me and sends us out into the enemy territory, not with a weapon in our hands, but with his message on our lips. And if you think about ambassadors, like, isn't it always true that for an ambassador to do his job, like, he's got to take the first step in the peace negotiations, right? Like, that's how it works. If there's ever going to be a bridge built between two parties, between somebody that you're estranged with, maybe it's a friend or whatever, and somebody has to go first, make the first move, lay the first plank. Jesus is asking his children to start building from their side. You're not just standing around like in the middle waiting for the other person to make the first move. No, you're moving the same way he moved first toward us. And so here's the question we have to wrestle with. Again, make it personal. Who is it? Who's the Spirit bringing to your heart and your mind right now? I don't need to name them. I probably don't even know them. But listen to what the Spirit is saying right now. He's bringing the name to your mind. If you're thinking about them as I'm talking, that's the person. Don't sweep that under the rug. Don't try and keep the peace any longer. Make peace in that relationship. Where's the fracture that you've been so carefully dodging? See, Jesus wants you to stop walking around that and make a decision today to run straight toward it. Make the call. Do it today. Send the text message. Set up the lunch appointment. Get it done this week. Lay the first plank. Extend the olive branch. You can't control the other side, but you can do everything within your power to carry the peace of Christ into that specific broken place. No exceptions, child of God. This is your guarantee that you actually belong to Jesus. When you live and you love like him. Listen to Romans 12:18. If possible. So far as it depends on who? Point to the person this is talking to. So far as it depends on you, child of God, it's your job to live peaceably. Make peace. Carry the same peace to others that once came looking for you when you were the one hiding in the hills. All right, now I'm not going to pretend that any of that's easy. Refusing fake peace and running into the real mess to pursue the real thing, that is going to cost you. Probably in a lot of different ways. I mean, I know that all too well from personal experience, that peacemakers usually get shot at from both sides. They're often misunderstood. So how in the world do you keep peace day after day when it's going to be really hard and it's probably going to be thankless and it might not even work, right? Because you can only control 50% of the reconciliation that needs to happen. How are you going to do that? You keep doing it because you're resting in something that is still coming. You're claiming a future reward, which brings me to the last point, number 3. I create peace when I rest in my Father's coming declaration. It's not just about the person I'm trying to make peace with. It's about the Father. It's about what he's going to declare as a result of the peacemaking that I engage in. Look one more time at the reward Jesus attaches to all of this. He says, the peacemakers shall be called, this is mind-blowing, they will be sons of God. You see that? And notice the tense. It's not like sometimes when you're doing some good peace work on the earth, like, I'll call you sons of God. Or it's not might be called sons of God. Tell me, what does it say? Shall be called. It's future. It's certainty. a certain declaration that is most definitely coming on the way, right? You need to understand this. This is a staggering title for Jesus to give to human followers. Because there was a time when the sons of God language was reserved only for the heavenly host. It only referred to his angelic family that surrounded the very throne of God, the highest, most exalted family in all of creation. But just like on earth, there was a great rebellion in the heavenlies as well. And so now Jesus takes that same breathtaking title that once was reserved for the angels, and get this, he reassigns it to ordinary people like you and me. It's crazy. That's why Paul, he asked this, what would otherwise be a very strange question in 1 Corinthians 6:3. He says, do you not know that we will judge the angels? We're like, what? I'm going to judge an angel? Well, this is why. Right here. Because we will replace them as his innermost relational family. We will be the new sons of God. See? You have to understand this. There are only ever two families in this entire world, in the entire universe. There are the children of God, and there are those who belong to the enemy. There's one side or the other. And the Bible is making it clear that you can tell them apart by one single thing. And it's not how religious they look on a Sunday morning. The way that you can tell them apart is by whether they love their brothers and their sisters or they destroy them. And you say, how would I destroy them? Well, you can do that actively in a lot of ways, or you can do it passively aggressively. Just kind of check out and not pursue the relationship anymore, right? You're not fostering the relationships with your brothers and sisters. What Jesus is making it clear is that the peacemakers, the real children of God, they are the ones willing to bear the unmistakable mark that is true of all of his family members. They will make peace in the world. Whenever you choose to heal what you could otherwise hurt or avoid, you are showing off to the world whose child you really are. Because you never look more like the Father than when you make peace with people who do not deserve it. That is the description of the Father, right? And remember, this coming declaration, in other words, one day, get this, Christian, one day Jesus Christ himself is going to stand up in front of all of creation, and he is going to say out loud what has been true of you all along, whether you were misunderstood, misheard, abused, like in all the ways that we experience, the reactions that we get to our attempts to make peace in this world, regardless of how that went for you, Jesus Christ is going to say what was true all along. This one right here, this guy is my son. This lady right here, she is a daughter of the one true King. And look at that little word, called. Do you see it? Super important word. Called the sons of God. Carries the weight of a courtroom. It means that God himself is the one doing the calling. It's communicating that he's the only one that has the authority to give this verdict, and that it has already been settled. So mark it down today. A very real day is coming when he's going to look at the peacemakers and he is going to announce for every single person in the universe to hear, this one is mine. These are my true disciples. They did not spend their lives playing religious games. They actively went out and made peace with other people. They are the ones who genuinely received my peace, and they are the ones who embraced it, and they are the ones who actively went out and delivered it to others. I secured the peace for them, and they lived it out. Let me tell you about another man who was given a real strange and rare gift. The gift was unique. It was rare. He got to read his own obituary before he died. Can you imagine? His name was Alfred Nobel. Alfred Bernhard Nobel. He was a Swedish chemist. He was famous for making an incredible invention, or inventing an incredible new thing. It was called dynamite. We still have it today. He invented the dynamite. All right, so think about that. He made something that could literally move mountains, but it could just as easily blow people to pieces. Well, one morning, this man was opening the morning newspaper, and he found himself reading his own obituary while he's still very much alive. And in fact, what had actually happened is his brother Ludwig had died, but this French paper confused the two men, and he printed the wrong Nobel's name with the death notice. And so there was, in black and white, announcing how the world would remember him once he was gone. And much to his dismay, do you see the title there? They called him the Merchant of Death. All right? Now, what if that was on your tombstone when you died? Here's the one thing you should remember about this guy. Like, he delivered death to everyone in his life. The merchant of death. He purchased death. He made it possible to transact death. The merchant of death, the bringer of death. I mean, it literally shook Alfred Nobel to the core, and it became a bit of a wake-up call because he wasn't dead. Like, he had a lot of life still to live. And so what did he do? He went out and he leveraged his entire fortune to change what he would be called and what he would be remembered for. He spent the rest of his days looking for examples of peacemakers in the world. And he even decided to start rewarding them with a little prize. He'd give them a coin when he saw them. And guess what? To this day, whenever you hear his name now, you no longer think merchant of death, do you? Because now he has a legacy of leaving the world with the Nobel Peace Prize. Think about it. Merchants of death or recipients of the Peace Prize on the last day. That's the same choice that you and I have today, friends. And let me be clear, you don't have to go out and spend your lives anxiously scrambling to earn this prize that Jesus Christ is talking about here. It's not about clawing your way and performing with hopes that maybe, just maybe, in the end, the verdict's going to come out all right. No, because for the true peacemaker, what Jesus is saying is that the verdict has already been written. Like, you are reading the final verdict before you die. And the cool thing is, our Father, in His grace, has said that that verdict is going to be, you or mine. It's a validation. He's told us ahead of time exactly what He's going to call us on the last day. And it's not going to be merchant of death. It's not going to be rebel. It's not going to be failure. It's not going to be like, good effort, but you didn't quite get it right. No, He's going to look straight at you in the eyes, and He's going to say, no, son, daughter, mine. And that's what we rest in, loved ones. You can't control the relationships in your life, but you can move forward toward them in peace. You can make up your mind you're going to be a peacemaker today, and you can trust that on the last day, Jesus is going to see it all. We make peace because the name child of God is already ours, and one day, in front of everybody, it's going to be announced from the throne. The peacemaking is not how we become a child of God. The peacemaking is the family resemblance that proves that you actually are His. Do you understand? This is what children of God do. That's why in the upcoming week, in all your different relationships, you must pour yourself out. You must be willing to be misunderstood. You must be willing to take arrows from both sides because your name does not hang on the verdict of the people you are trying to reconcile. Your name hangs on a declaration that is coming down from heaven and has already been decided. It's not wishful thinking. It's your inheritance, child of God. The same Father who calls you His child today is going to glorify you as His child forever, and He's going to seat you in a world that has finally been made whole, a new heaven, a new earth. No more enemies. And remember, Jesus Himself was the great first peacemaker, right? And they nailed Him to a cross for doing so. And so don't be shocked when your peacemaking earns you some arrows or some cross moments instead of applause from people that don't want peace. Good news, that only further identifies you with your real family, with your real Savior. But no matter how people respond, do not forget you were made for something more than just keeping the peace. You were made to make it. You were made to go out there into hostile territory around you and look like your Father. Love like your Father. Bear the family resemblance. How? By refusing the fake peace that just avoids the problem. By running headlong straight into the brokenness around you, carrying the peace that already came and found you. And thirdly, by resting in the name your Father is about to declare over you in front of all of creation. Do that faithfully, child of God, as His son or His daughter. And when the people around you watch the way that you live, they will marvel, whether they accept it or not. They will look at the way that you bring peace in a fractured world. And whether they want to acknowledge it or not, they will see something that, beyond any doubt, testifies to whose child you really are. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they and only they shall be called sons of God. I look like my Father when I create peace in a fractured world. By His grace, that's who you are. And so by His grace, let's go out and live like it in the week ahead. Let's pray. God, thank you. Thank you for what you've shown us here today. Lord, I pray the peace of Christ over this room right now. Oh, Lord, we're not fooling you at all. You see right through the games. You heard the argument on the way to church this morning. You saw the silent treatment delivered in homes over the weekend, the pulling away, the self-centered accusations, the fits of rage, the hostility, the war in homes, in friendships, in families, in communities, in neighborhoods, in workplaces. And this is exactly what you first have saved us from through your own peacemaking in the world, but it's also what you have sent us out to deliver and to work against in all of these relational spheres. Lord, would you convict hearts today of the ways that we have literally been partnering with the world's agenda to bring war instead of partnering with you in a mission of mercy to deliver and to make peace with those in our lives who do not deserve it. May we not grow weary in well-doing. May we not lose sight of the coming declaration when it will all be made right in the future, God, when you will say over us that I saw your peacemaking. That was the thing that validified your claim to be my follower. You went out and you actually lived like me. You loved like me. You didn't sing about it on Sunday, but lived differently all week long. You moved toward the brokenness. You laid down your life even when it hurt to do so. You left the results in my hands, but you worked to make peace. I saw it, child of God. You are mine. Jesus, you say you bless people like that. You say that's where real blessing comes from. That's where real happiness comes from. Lord, I pray that there'd be blessed marriages in the week to come because of a repentant heart today who would lay down the weapons and make peace. I pray that you'd restore friendships that were once vibrant and alive but have grown icy and cold. Lord, heal brokenness in this church family. Brokenness from recent events or brokenness from long ago. Tear down the barriers. Call wounded soldiers from their place of fighting back to a place of peace. God, we need your help in this, Spirit. We're not naturally this way. We are by birth and by nature. We are at enmity with you, so change that about us today. Soften our hearts. Put within us the thing that only you can put there. And equip us to be peacemakers in the week ahead. We give you praise for this, Lord, and we ask for it in Jesus Christ's name. Amen.